Devin, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you can't compete, you'll never play. It's not necessarily how good somebody is. It's not necessarily they're like how naturally talented they are. It's their ability to go out and compete at a really high level. And that means a lot of different things. So like the one thing that I say more than anything, like even I was playing pickleball with some other guys and it's me versus me. I'm always competing with myself to be the best version of myself. If I compete with other people, I start playing the wrong game. And so like my motto, me versus me.
Devin, my friend, really great to get connected with you. Shout out to our mutual friend, Nick. And it's going to be a great conversation.
I'm excited, man. Thanks so much for having me on. And I'm excited to kind of dive in, man. It sounds like we've got a lot in common. I have not done BJJ yet, but it is one of those things that like, as I've talked to my wife and we've talked about it, we just hear how good it is for kids. And I'm like, I want to dive into getting our kids into BJJ and getting them into like, I don't know. I hear it builds confidence, great for athleticism, great for helping them to learn how to control their body. I have a son and he's like 7. He'll be 8 in, I guess like in 2 months. And he is almost 5 feet tall.
Wow.
It's 7 years old, almost 8. So like you can imagine though, like, so he's up to my chest and he's 7 years old. And so, but you can imagine like that comes with a lot of clumsiness. He doesn't quite understand his body and how to control it. And so I'd love to get him in like a context that helps him with that. So I know that's probably not where we thought we'd absolutely just start this podcast off on, but yeah, man, so cool. Thanks for having me on.
So Devin, what you said is such a great point. So many people confuse martial arts with just what they're for, which is like the fighting aspect, but all the other things, just gaining confidence. And for young kids, like you said, learning how to move your body and have kinesthetic awareness, I think is so important. So I'm so glad you said that. My son's still a bit too young. I kind of played jiu-jitsu with him a little bit, but I want to tell him you can do whatever you want, like as long as you put a lot of effort into it, whatever sports, whatever hobbies, interests. But I really want you to do jiu-jitsu as well, just because I think every boy should learn how to defend himself, and every girl too, I guess. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends who have never done any martial arts, they'll send me photos like, oh, my 6-year-old just did his first jiu-jitsu competition. I didn't even know, they got them into jiu-jitsu. So many people are realizing the benefits you get for your kids getting them into martial arts.
Yeah, and it's very similar to like gymnastics as well. Like, cause like I think of like with gymnastics, they learn how to fall, like
Yes.
learn how to fall well. So like when they get out on a soccer field one day, if they want to play, they don't hurt themselves because they fall wrong or something. And so like I think those things are so foundational for hand-eye coordination, for just understanding how to control your body. I actually think those things are probably better than putting kids into like the main core sports early on in life. I think it's really interesting.
Exactly. And I used to go to this really high level, like Olympic judo gym. And when you looked at him teach the real young kids, it wasn't judo, it wasn't martial arts, it was literally just falling, tumbling, kind of gymnastic stuff, just moving, because kids have so much energy, you just want them moving. But they're way too young to be focused on, a Japanese throw that they have to know the name of and all these different things. So I thought that was really cool, and you're so right. Devin, what your background is in baseball, is that right?
Oh, sure. Not quite. It's funny. Nick always says that. I played baseball in college. I didn't even play like professionally or anything like that. And so I have this. This is very funny. I have got this weird thing where I'm always like the worst person on the best team. And so I'm always on the best team. So I played at a really good baseball. I played at a really good school in baseball. We were top 25 in the nation, but I didn't even play. Like it's one of those things. And then I also played video games professionally. And so like, but I was on a really good team, but like I barely played. And so it's one of those things where no, I didn't. Yes, baseball is a background, but that's not like what got me here or where I am or anything like that. But it's funny because Nick always says that. Nick's always like, yeah, this is a baseball guy. You play baseball. And I was like, in college? Sure.
Well, shout out to Nick. But do you think you got some things from your athletic background, like some principles to live your best life that you still carry through to today?
100%, man. So I remember my coach, he was the president of USA Baseball at the time. And he said, Devin, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you can't compete, you'll never play. And so for me, I always take that with me of like, hey, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily how good somebody is. It's not necessarily like how naturally talented they are. It's their ability to go out and compete at a really high level. And that means a lot of different things. So like the one thing that I say more than anything, like I was playing pickleball with some other guys and like it's me versus me. I'm always competing with myself to be the best version of myself. So there's sure because I think what happens if I compete with other people, I start playing the wrong game. I start climbing the ladder of success on the wrong wall, right? I'm going out and I'm doing something on somebody else's terms, not what makes me the best version of myself, or not even what accomplishes my goals, because somebody that I'm competing against has totally different goals than me, wants to be in a totally different place than me. And a lot of times those places are not where I want to go at all. And so for me, it's what in this context allows me to be the best version of myself to get to where I want. And so like my motto, me versus me, like in a lot of those ways. So I find myself competing against myself, pushing myself to be the best version. So like that's one of them. But then also consistency and discipline. Those are such key roles when it comes to being successful in anything. Those are also I'm a big fan of like personality tests. So strength finders, the strength finders, and then predictive index, things like that. You know, of course, you've got like the Enneagram, but I really love strength finders. And strength finders has like this 34 strengths that you have. And it's funny because like on my bottom 10 are consistency and discipline. But I think those are such pivotal things that if athletics didn't teach me that, I wouldn't be able to do. I wouldn't do because I'm not naturally inclined to do those. And one other thing too is, and this is why I love having and hiring a lot of employees that are athletes, is because that consistency and discipline that I learned early in life has taught me to wake up, grind, work hard for the hope of winning a championship, right? Like I've set our goal at the beginning of a season, you set your goal to win the championship. It takes hard work and it takes dedication, discipline, grinding, practice, practice, practice to be able to get to that point. But like it's not instant. You're going to lose along the way. You're going to face trials along the way. You're going to have to learn how to rely on each other along the way, rely on your training along the way to eventually, hopefully, win a championship because you've worked hard enough to get there. And I think in business, what happens is you work hard, you wake up every morning, you grind, you put together your processes and your systems, you do the work to close that deal, to do whatever we want to end up doing. And I think like there is a grittiness and a grind that comes along with athletics that I think is really hard to find in other places for the hope of winning a championship. You know what I'm saying? And I think those are like some of the lessons that athletics have really helped me with early on, just kind of in business and through my entrepreneurial journey.
No, that's absolutely beautiful. Such good wisdom there. And Devin, that idea of me against me. So it's so tough. So I competed I'm temporarily retired, but I competed in combat sports for 2.5 decades. And it's so true because it is always me against me, but also you do measure yourself in, there's a winner and a loser in every competitive event. So it's so tough. But you just reminded me of two things. The first was an MMA fight I had, and I trained so hard, and there was some opponent that got injured just before they got me a last minute replacement. And the guy was a weight class below me, and he didn't have a good record. And it was just literally just the guy just wanted to get someone on the show. And I remember just before my coach pulled me aside, he said, "Listen, like you got to be so careful because he's always got a puncher's chance. You got little 4-ounce gloves, and don't be complacent. Don't overlook him." And he actually gave me a nice black eye. He called me with something, but I submitted him in the first round. And I remember the next morning, I felt so shitty about it. I just didn't feel good because I beat someone who wasn't on my level, and it didn't make me feel good. So I ran a half marathon with my running buddy the next morning on no sleep. I got up really early, ran a half marathon, and I felt really good about that. And then conversely, on the other side, when I was doing a jiu-jitsu competition, I remember competing against this incredible Fredson Pashow, is former world champion. And I think I probably competed one of the best I've ever competed, but I lost. But I was really proud of myself because I knew that I felt like I was in a real flow state and I competed more. My expectations were less than what I did, I guess. So I was really happy. And that's just one example of you've got to be honest with yourself. So many people, if you live extrinsically for the praise of other people, you're always going to take beating a bum and saying, yeah, I'm a winner. That's going to make you feel good. But if it's really intrinsic, like what you said, it is me against me. And if you beat a bum, that doesn't feel good. So it's just, it is, but
Yeah.
it is so difficult. It is so difficult in a world that measures winning and losing.
Yeah. And what they see is they see the record, right? That's all they see is like, oh, winning the record. But for you at the end of the day, does it accomplish what you've set out to accomplish along the journey? Because sometimes even those wins, like they cost time. Like you trained for that, you did this when you could have had that energy in other places. And even if you lost, like you to the better person, it advanced, it got you better to get to the next level quicker or faster or to where you wanted to be ultimately. So it is really interesting to think through that.
Yeah, and especially us as fathers now trying to explain
Mm.
to our kids, especially the boys that are more, I think they're going to be more competitive. Trying to explain that it's real tough. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but I think it seems like the world is more superficial in terms of like you almost just want to win so you can post it on your Instagram and get the praise. I just feel like social media has made everything much more extrinsic. And I always think, like you said, if you play the real game, it's always you against you because, you know, if you're trying to be the best father on paper, so your neighbors can and your friends can say, "Oh, you're such a great dad," but if behind closed doors, you're a shitty dad. Like you basically lost the game of life, you know. So I think that's it's just such an important concept.
It's also really hard to balance that though, because there's always this natural desire for approval, validation. I think at the core of who we are, we want to be known and we want to feel valued. And we get such a dopamine hit from social media that instantly gives us that validation that we just want more. And so then our life, our habits, our desires start framing around that. And then ultimately, like that's the hard part is just actively denying the desire of approval of others for the sake of what we feel like we've been really called to, especially as dads and as husbands, as business owners. It's really hard to not compare yourself, right? They say comparison is the thief of joy, and so it's really hard not to compare yourself to other people when we see it all the time on social media. It's a
Yeah,
tough thing.
very true. Especially people like
Everybody wants a Lambo.
yeah. But I feel like for people like you and I get a lot of business through social media. So I kind of miss the days when
Yep.
all my life I was a trader and I worked in the Chicago Board of Trade, didn't have any social media. No one knew what I did. I just went in, I made a whole bunch of money completely anonymously. There's a part of me that really misses those years, whereas now I have to work with clients and relationships and social media is a great tool for advancing those. But with you, Devin,
For sure. It is for sure.
so you finished college. What was your next step? Did you go straight into real estate, or did your career take a longer route to find it?
Much, much longer route. After college, I actually went and I worked at a church. I was a college pastor at a church here in Charlotte. So I got called into like full-time vocational ministry at the time. But at the same time, I ended up starting another company. I just felt like there's this old theologian, and he said, his name is Charles Spurgeon, and he said, if you could do anything other, like, so I mean, an incredible pastor, called to ministry out in London, just a great guy. But he says, if you can do anything other than ministry, do it. And at the time, my thought was like, ministry is such a high calling that I feel like God had given me the desire of to pursue entrepreneurship. If He would have really called me to ministry, He wouldn't give me such a strong desire to pursue entrepreneurship because it's such a high ministry is such a high calling. So I started another company at the time. It was a wedding photography company. So I did that with my wife and I for a little bit. It's funny. I'm not one to brag, but it's just by nature of what the podcast is I was like one of the top 30 wedding photographers in the world. I photographed weddings in 30 different countries. I photographed celebrities. I photographed at the Taj Mahal, weddings, like crazy stuff. And then at the same time, though, started getting into real estate wholesaling at the time. And then that's how it really got started, was real estate wholesaling back in 2021. So I guess that's what, 4 years ago? Yeah, April. So, right, almost 4 years on the dot. Grew very, very fast because I had a pretty good background on business, grew very fast. And then at that time, because of the way we were wholesaling straight to hedge funds, at the end of 2021, interest rates started changing. So the hedge fund stopped buying immediately. So we went from doing 70 deals in our first 6 months to just like 4 deals in our next 4 months. And I had to lay off all my staff and my business crashed and burned. And I had to figure out what the heck I was going to do. And so then I just put my head down and I grinded and learned how to actually wholesale real estate. And then ended up starting a couple years ago, starting an investment fund. So a real estate fund, started buying property with that real estate fund. And then now I still have that wholesale company. It runs pretty dang well on autopilot. Still have the real estate fund. We buy property. We do a ton of creative financing. So even right now, we buy property at 2-3% interest rates. We have for the past year and some change. And then so I'm just giving you like a little bit of a catch up. I know we'll probably like backtrack a little bit, but and then now what I spend most of my time doing is helping people to scale and automate capital raising and launch and scale investment funds. So somebody wants to start a real estate fund, a private equity fund, crypto hedge fund. Actually, my next fund I'm starting is a lending, essentially like a private credit fund. And then right after that, I'm starting a crypto hedge fund, but I got to find the right operator first. But that's kind of like from college to now.
So just going back to you being so successful as a wedding photographer and getting, these incredible opportunities, and I'm sure they paid well. How did you do that as a young kid off the bat with, I'm sure, a lot of more experienced people in that field? How did you rise so quickly to the top?
Oh yeah, man. So in a lot of what we just talked about, because I think you could be the best wedding photographer in the world, but if nobody knows your name, you'll be the brokest wedding photographer in the world. So it's all like everything is sales and marketing, right? So if I can sell myself, if I can market myself, then I can win. It doesn't matter how good you are. I think, and you hear this from Gary Vee for the past 10 years, and now we hear it from Alex Hormozy because he's the 2025 version of Gary Vee. But it's just like attention is currency, right? If you can get attention and if you can get enough attention, then you'll always have business. I mean, really, I was charging $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 for me to come and photograph people's weddings, like for their photography. That's how much I charge people. I photograph weddings in Chicago, and I live out here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so it was one of those things where like I just got enough attention and built enough relationships that it ended up doing that way. And at that point, when you're doing that many, I mean, I think I built up the company to be like, we had a studio, we had photographers in 7 different states, and we were probably like a top 1% wedding photography studio in the country. And so it just was, the vehicle doesn't really matter. I love business and I love marketing. And at the time, photography was it. And people are like, oh my gosh, you gave it up. You were so good. And I was like, yeah, because I found real estate. Real estate is the next thing. And then now I'm like, I'm kind of done with wholesaling real estate because now I'm onto funds. And funds is like, that's the pinnacle of every business, right? Like the 15%, and it's not about the money. I think it's the ability to scale impact, which is most important for me. But 15% of all billionaires in the world are fund managers. And that's the highest percentage of all the billionaires. And so you look at guys like David Tepper and Steve Schwartzman, Ken Griffin, those guys take home $1 billion, $2 billion a year. And it's just it's a different game. And so it's just that's now like the next level of what's fascinating to me and really exciting. And so the model, what it is, business has not changed. It's just the vehicle that's gotten me there. That's like at the end of the day, what I think has pushed me to be the most successful is that I never stop learning. And I think, it's like I think everybody, when they start a business, it's like a pendulum, right? So you learn your craft, the pendulum swings this way. You learn a craft and you're like, ooh, I really like this. This is really good. Let me learn how to do this more. And then you go, wait, I think this can be a business. And so then the pendulum swings this way. So then now you spend all your time learning about the business, which is great. So now you start building a business. It starts to become sustainable. It's replacing your income. You quit your job. You just now work on that business. And then what happens is people leave it there and they stop swinging to the other, back to the other side of learning. And then now, this is a quote that I live by. It's honing your craft in obscurity. So this idea of like, when nobody's watching, when nobody's looking, when it's not a massive stage you're on, or when there's not not $1 million project that you are on the line for, you're grinding and you're learning and you're mastering your craft, right? You're spending that 10,000 hours mastering your craft. So then you swing the pendulum and then you're able to now scale because you've mastered your craft. You can now scale your business. And so for me, it's been a back and forth pendulum of like learning that I like something, starting to build a business that replaces income. Now I'm mastering my craft, and then now I'm scaling that with the right systems and operations and processes and business or processes and teams and people. Because I think that's what happens there. And then now, then you can actually start to scale. So that's kind of, I think, as I've thought about it that way, as I've thought about building a business, I think it's because I didn't get complacent in just the fact that it replaced my income, but I continued to progress to the next step. And I think that's why I probably became pretty, I mean, I guess it's all relative, right? But I guess objectively successful. So yeah.
What an amazing description of what it takes to build something. I think you said earlier, you said everything is, what was it, attention and marketing. I think that's the biggest thing that I see. So you're so true. You can be the best wedding photographer in the world, but if people don't know you, you're not marketing yourself, you're not going to get any business. And it's like that with everything. I was talking about my one buddy who's a dentist, and he's a bit more introverted. And he's like his two sisters and his dad are dentists. He's like, very good at what he does, very passionate about it, but he doesn't like putting himself out there. And we're always talking about it because he's like, man, you're doing a better job marketing. He's like, for years he was saying you should be doing real estate videos because you have an accent and this and that. And I'm like, I don't really like doing videos. And it's like all these different industries people get in, and they think that if you get good at the industry, that's it. But marketing is life. How did you get your wife to fall in love with you? How did I get mine to? Well, we obviously had to sell ourselves to some degree, and everything in life comes down to that, right? Doesn't people? There's this thing where a lot of people have this reticence to market themselves because they think it's corny or sleazy or something. Like, oh, I don't want to be a sleazy, salesman or something. But it's just, unfortunately, it's the reality. Like you said, if you don't have the network of people that know you're good at something, you can be the best in the world at it, and you will toil in obscurity forever. But what I really love what you said is, you can't just be okay and then market yourself, and you're not going to get to the next step unless you do toil in obscurity and do become an absolute expert at your field. So I think that's the dichotomy between those two things is really interesting, and it's awesome the way you clearly pointed that out.
Oh, thanks. I think that's what I mean. I think that's a lot too what Jim Collins talks about in like Good to Great, right? There's a big difference between just being good and then actually being great at something. That makes the biggest difference, is like our desire and our ability to push towards that next level. And I think that is a lot. I mean, you'll see that in a lot of athletes. Like there is, especially, oh my gosh, especially wrestlers and people who do like jujitsu. There's a little crazy that like you gotta switch on to get past the level in which like you think you physically cannot continue at. And I think once you get to that person, and it's the old like the old meme of the guy who's like, there's two people on a pitchfork and they're really close to the diamonds, and one guy turns around too early and the other guy continues. There's got to be something in you that continues to push. And if you hear this, like I listen to podcasts where they interview billionaires, and if people always ask them, they go, what's the one thing that you notice is a common thread in all the people you interview? And it's just like, they didn't quit.
Yep.
They didn't quit. And so I think what ends up happening a lot of times is either people quit too early or people become really complacent. And I think good is the enemy of great. And so then what ends up happening is they end up just stopping, and sure, they live their lives and that's what they're happy with. Then that's fine. Because at the end of the day, too, it's all relative. It's what you want out of your life. But, and I mean, Grant Cardone is, he is what he is. But he has this book, and I can't remember which one I was reading, but he says, do you think that would you say that you're morally a good person? And you go, yeah, I think I'm a morally a good person. Okay. Do you think that like, you like you have good ethics, you work hard, you take care of people well? And then I'm like, yeah, I think so. And he goes, well, then if you think that what you provide, the service you provide is the best possible thing for that person, then you have a moral and ethical obligation to sell or to get that in front of that person until they tell you like, get out of my face, I don't want it, or like they die, right? So like, if I believe I have a moral obligation because I think what I have is best for that person, then again, sales, right? That's what we're selling. We sell what we believe in, because if you don't believe in it, you'll never push it that hard because you don't think it can actually change somebody's life. So yeah.
That's so true. The pendulum analogy, Devin, it's so powerful, because when you get back to the stage where you've been toiling in obscurity to become elite at what you do, then when you have to scale it, a lot of time that becomes then your comfort zone, and you have to leave your comfort zone to go back to them like dealing with people that are going to be taking over a lot of the tasks for you. And that's, I've noticed the more people I talk to, they're very successful. They can have the discipline and the drive and the work ethic to get to that stage, but then they get to a certain age and place in life where they just don't want to do things that are uncomfortable, leave their comfort zone to pass off the baton to somebody else. And that was something I noticed with myself too, where I kept saying, well, I can do it better, so I should just keep doing it. But it's like, I'm pretty sure you and I could clean a McDonald's floor with a mop better than the guy doing it. That doesn't mean that we should be doing that, And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, I think the goal of a CEO is to hire people that run the company better than they do. Because what ends up happening then is that allows you to do what like a true visionary does, is visionary, like visioneering, right? Like this idea of engineering the vision of where your company is going to go, and then being able to cast that vision and then make that vision stick. And then you have people that then on your team do those things better than you. I I can't tell you how bad I am at a lot of things in my company. I am so grateful there are other people running those parts of my company. Otherwise, it would crash and burn really bad. Worse than worse. Like, so I just want to make sure that I'm putting the right people in the right seats so that I can do what I'm best at. And that's the hard part, like delegating, this idea of delegating and doing that, because like it's our baby. It's the thing that we feel like we built. But if you've built your systems and your processes good enough, I love using like AI to do that. I'm so bullish on like AI, crypto, like fun, all this stuff. So we could talk for hours about all this stuff. But I use use AI to build out our systems and processes to make it reproducible. Otherwise, like, they say, and I can't remember what book it is, but I think it just talks about like us being the ceiling. It's this idea of, there's like a certain philosophy or something like that. The law of the lid. The law of the lid. That's what it's called. So this idea of like the law of the lid, of like the lid of where I can I can be limits where my company can go if I don't put other people in the best positions to be able to succeed. And so for me to just build out the systems and the processes of what I know to help other people to either expand on or to improve. Otherwise, it's capped at my ability. A company to be capped at my ability, no thanks. So I think about that all the time because we want to keep it, we want to hold it, and we want to say, this is my baby, and not delegate or give that responsibility to somebody else. But I think that's the only way that your company can grow, or else it's really handcuffed by you. And if you're a CEO like me and you, we're just trying to stay focused, like you said at the beginning of this podcast. That's impossible for me. I'm working on 8 different things at once. So that means that like my company can't actually grow well if I'm working at 8 different things at once, but it relies so much on me. And so we have to be able to hand those things off so it actually can grow. Yeah.
So like you said, you're focused on so many different things. You have a very active mind. How do you stay present with your family? Like, do you have the ability to turn it on and off?
Oh, fantastic question.
Something you struggle with.
So it's really interesting. So, I think this idea of balance is all like, blah, there's no such thing as balance. I think what has to happen is I think you have to have a high level of communication and management of expectations. Because if I've communicated well with my wife that these are the barriers, the things, or the call that I need to make, or this or that, then I've managed the expectations so that at that point, my family doesn't feel neglected or feel like that I'm choosing them over them. I've managed expectations. We've had those communications. We've had that communication, and they know what is going to happen. And they also know that when the time comes, I am very much so of them. So like I wake up, and please, like, don't let this be I don't care about, I think that everybody needs 8 hours of sleep. I think you should take care of everybody. You should sleep. I just don't. So I get up really early so that I have a couple of hours before I have to get my kids up at 6:00, because from 6 to 7:30, I am getting them ready, getting them breakfast, getting them clothed, and then taking them to the bus stop, taking them to school. And then when I get home at 5:00, unless I have something, I really try hard to be present with them in the moment in what they're doing. Now, does that mean like I don't get distracted? Because I'm still not the best at it. And then even after they go to bed, sometimes I work still. So I think I try my best. I try to manage expectations. I try to communicate well, and involve my wife in a lot of things so she knows what's going on. I was doing this one thing that Rob Dyrdek did, because I think Rob Dyrdek he's pretty superhuman too. He's kind of crazy with that stuff, where he'd wake up every morning and he would send his wife his like calendar for the day. and like a little love quote. And my wife really appreciated that. I should probably go back to it. I might. Thanks for encouraging me, Lawrence. I'll do that.
That is such a good point because my wife recently gave me a hard time a few days ago because she's like, I never know your schedule, and with real estate, it tends to be different every week. And she's like, you're not putting stuff in the joint calendar, so I know what you're doing, so I can plan my day too. And that's so true. Yeah, communications and setting expectations. But I think for a lot of people, they can have the time boundary of saying, okay, after 5 o'clock, my phone's away and I'm present with my family.
Mhm.
But it's the mind. The mind, I don't know if you have this, but my biggest struggle is thoughts just keep popping up to do with business when I'm trying to be present. Not always, but it annoys me
Yep.
when it happens. But it's so different for us as dads. When I think about my parents, my parents, how my dad had it with him. He was a pilot, so he'd be gone. When he was gone, he was flying planes. And when he was home, there was nothing to do. There was no cell phones. No one's bothering him. And that was much easier for him to have those boundaries and clear distinctions. He's not thinking about the trip he has to take when he's with us. Like it is what it is. Whereas for us and a lot of people today, that's much more of a struggle, is to be present when you have so many things going on.
It's not an option anymore. Like I think so we just have to learn to adapt, and we have to learn to pivot and make sure that what we're doing is, I guess, honoring to our family, because at the end of the day, really, I always think of this phrase of like, I will make not climbing the ladder of success the wrong wall, because like there's so many things and so many places and directions I can go. At the end of the day, when I get up there, do I want to look back and be like, this is it? I did what I feel like I was called to, and I don't have any regrets. Because you always hear, oh, the things that people regret the most is not the amount of time they weren't able to work, but it was the amount of time they didn't get with their family. And I just don't want to have those regrets at the end of the day. So I don't know. It's hard because I can't actively be like, oh no, I put my phone away and I'm just super present with my kids. But I do make sure that I don't miss anything that they do. I do make sure that I've built a life and I'm thankful for it, that allows me to go to every single field trip and to everything that happens at their school and to all those things. And I'm thankful that I've been blessed to be able to do that. It's not, you can't say that for everybody. So then you have to learn how to adjust and compensate in other areas. I can't be at the school field trip, but I won't miss any weekend things. And that was one of the main reason why I quit the wedding photography thing, because like I remember, so I played baseball in college, and so my son was playing t-ball one year, and he had a game on Saturday. It was his first game, and I was able to be there. It was awesome. Was there, ran around, had a good time. But then because weddings are on nights and weekends, I missed every single game for the rest of the season, and he quit halfway through the season, and I didn't, and he's hasn't played since. And it's like, if I was there, would he have loved baseball and still be playing? And because I was there to cheer him on, but instead he doesn't play anymore. And because I wasn't at any of those, because I was doing the weddings, and so I would traveling the world, and a wedding is on a Saturday, but I have to leave on a a Wednesday
Mm.
because this wedding's in India or Barcelona or whatever, and I don't want to miss. I can't miss their. I mean, I can't miss a flight because
Yeah.
then I got to photograph their wedding, and so then I'm gone Wednesday to Monday for one wedding, and it just didn't make any sense.
That's such a good point.
So you just got to choose.
Yeah,
Choose it.
and you really have to choose, back to what you said earlier about knowing kind of your signature strengths and making sure that your life is gonna match with those. It's the same with, if you. I remember a good friend who finished medical school, and he pivoted and became an entrepreneur, and he just didn't want the hours of the late night calls when you're on call, and he just like he realized that that's not going to fit with the idea of the ideal life for him. So he completely changed careers after, investing years and years in medical school. So I love stories like that. I think the author that wrote the Jurassic Park books, Michael Crichton, I think he was maybe a doctor or something. He had a career before, and he's just like, I don't like it. He pivoted to being a best-selling author. So I think that's really cool. Can I ask
That's
you?
awesome. I do think though, even really quickly though, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like knowing what like really you're passionate about, right? Because your doctor friend that then became an entrepreneur because he didn't want to work a lot. My wife once was like, would you ever work a 9 to 5 so that it'd be a 9 to 5? And I'm like, knowing me, I could still work for another person and I still would work 24/7 because I love it. You know what I'm saying? Like, doesn't matter what the role is. I love it. and I'm going to work a lot. So then I just have to manage the expectations and have the conversation and try to be present when I'm there because I love to work. I really love to work. I really do. And some people don't. And that's okay. You just have to cater your life and prioritize your relationships and people to match that and those expectations. Cause like my wife was like, "Oh, you work a lot. Would you consider a job?" And I'm like, "What makes you think if I work for somebody else, I'm not going to work just as much?" I love it. It's just what I'm going to do. So it just is one of those things of like, it really comes down to expectation managing.
Because you love what you do, that it's got to be so much easier for you to be motivated, consistent, and show up because you love it so much. Those people that hate what they do, but they're watching the Daily Goggins videos and trying to get motivated. It's a losing battle if you hate what you do. So that's such good advice. Just you know, you're not going to get motivated if it's like pulling teeth, But if it's something you love, it's not going to take much for you to get that. Put the time in to become an expert. That's going to, the rewards are going to be exponential. So that's so interesting.
100%. Yeah.
Devin, I heard someone talking recently, and he said the mistake people make is they look at someone like you who's doing really well with these funds now, and they kind of look at what you're doing today. Whereas he was saying what you should be doing is you should say, how did you get to where you are? Like, how did you become so? Forget about the success you have today. Take you after college. How did you learn how to market yourself so well as a wedding photographer? Because those skills are the same ones we're using today in different fields, like the same principles. So how did you realize at a young age that it's not just about the skill creation, it's about putting myself out there and marketing? Like, how did you know that when you were so young?
Yeah, so I think what has to happen is and also too, like it's funny because just because I do funds doesn't mean I'm successful. No, there's a lot of fund managers. You got to work a second job because either like the horizon on the time horizon on the fund is like you don't get paid out to the end or whatever. It's tough. It's tough. But I would say I focused more on like there's two mottos that I live by that I think kept me really consistent is like done is better than perfect. At the end of the day, like done is just better than perfect. And then zero is better, or sorry, one is better than none. So I think what ends up happening is we look at metrics and that's how we measure our acceptance and our validity in the world. And that is not always true because I think what happens is then our identity, our value, our self worth starts getting wrapped up in what other people think of us rather than what we feel like either we've been called to or what we're really passionate about. So then we start looking at vanity metrics like, oh man, only one person liked this photo. I'm not going to post anymore. Oh, only two people did this, only five people, whatever, only two or three people showed up to my training, my webinar, my whatever. It doesn't matter. I say one is better than none. So if one person showed up, I am going to act like 100 people showed up because then what happens is that person feels like they're not getting shafted. And then that person ends up being a raving fan. And then that's how it snowballs from there. And so I think we just have to change our mindset and our perspective as to why we're doing it. Because if it's for the metrics and if it's for the money's not going to come. The money's going to take a really long time to come. And if that's the reason you're doing it, go work for somebody else. You'll do way better. You'll do so much better working for somebody else. I promise you. Anybody listening to this that wants to be an entrepreneur and they're not making money and they're struggling to decide on if they want to be an entrepreneur or something, go work for somebody else. It's way easier. You'll make a lot more money, a lot less stressful, way better. But like, if you feel like you've truly been called to it and you know you have, because being an entrepreneur has been so romanticized in our culture, it is sickening. Oh my gosh, I hate it. Like you open up social media and there's all these fake entrepreneurs that end up going to jail, doing something stupid, like losing it all because like I don't want to say they weren't built for it, but it wasn't really what they were called to. They were following the vanity metrics that don't really matter. It really at the core of who you are, you got to feel like if I didn't make money for the next 5 years doing this, I still want to get up and do it every day. Because that was like the last 5 years of my life in this real estate thing as the market crashed. But I felt like this is it. The last 3 years, 2-3 years since the market crashed. Like I still like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to get up. I want to do this and I want to keep pushing because now, 3 years later, it's all starting to come to fruition. Where even like yesterday, funny. My wife and I were on the way to dinner, and she was like, "This is probably one of the first times where I've been like, okay, I can see it now. I could see what he's been talking about for the last couple of years." Where I'm like, "Baby, just wait, just wait, just wait." And now it's starting because, but it like, it's funny because then people, what will end up happening is people go, "Wow, man, that he was an overnight success." Yeah, it was a really long night. It was a really long night. But what I did was I honed my craft in obscurity. And so I just think that like you'll see all these people fight for vanity metrics. You'll see all these people want the money or the Lambos that are all rentals or get repossessed or whatever. But the Instagram will tell them that. But really, if they just put their head down and fight the good fight of what they feel like they're called to, then and only then do I feel like it's actually worth it to persevere through the hard times. And I think of like a Bible verse in James. James 1 says, like, count it all joy when you face trials of various kinds, for those trials produce steadfastness or endurance. And then it says, and let endurance have its full effect. Right? This idea, because like what happens so many times when we face trials is we want to go, get me out of this, get me out of this, get me to the other side. Why, God? But in the time and in that moment, it's like our question should be, instead of why, God, it should be, what is the full effect that this season of my life should be having on me? Like, what is the lesson? What is the goal? What is the thing that I should be learning right now that will ultimately, one, get me to where I want to be in life, or just, I mean, yeah, what is the lesson that propels me to where I'm really called to be? So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question.
That was awesome. We're gonna come back to that. But no, just how did you know as a young man when you first got into like I'm gonna be a wedding photographer? How did you know how to market yourself so
So
well?
far off. That's so far off what I was.
That was great.
My God. No, but I think it started with social media, right? It was just me saying not like, oh yeah, it started with me going, one is better than none, and done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
I just did it. I just did it. If I felt so strongly about it, I just did it. Well, here's the thing too, is I realized that businesses, especially that are not like SaaS company, I think businesses just in general, read the book Raving Fans. I think what happens is a lot of times our relationships become very transactional instead of relational. And when they become transactional, then you don't build a really deep core of raving fans that then help you to really propel your business. Social media is a massive reason why. And I didn't have a huge following. I had wedding photography friends with like hundreds of thousands of followers. I had like 15,000. And like, but I had people being like, I want you no matter what, fly you anywhere in the world. It is you. And I think it was because I just was like, I tried to be hyper relational. Even now, if somebody follows me now, I personally send them a message that's like, hey, how did you find me? How can I help you in your capital raising and fund launching journey? And that, yes, this is actually me. And I do that physically every time. Not a bot, not whatever. It's me. And I just think that relational aspect is what helped me to be really successful in that company, because it really got my name out there and made people go, I want you more than anything. Like, it's you. It's not somebody else. It's because I was more relational than I was transactional.
You're also very personable. And I remember when when I first moved to the US, I was sent by a trading company. And then they decided to kind of break away from the London office and do their own thing. But when they did, they cut the staff basically in half. And I remember I didn't have any worries. I was very good at what I did, so I wasn't worried about my job. But there was two of my friends there, and one was pretty good trader, but kind of new, and one wasn't the best, but he was super funny, super personable, and everything. And the guy that wasn't great at his job, but he was way more personable, ended up keeping his job, and they let go of the other guy. And that was such a good wake up call. I remember saying they should teach a class in MBA when you do your MBA on just being likable and being personable, because people that make the decisions of where you're going to go in your career if you work for a company, they want to be around people with good energy, the right kind of personality that they want to be around day in day out. But no one talks about that. So I think that must have been like, even just you, like you said, you're integrating AI and everything, but you take the time yourself to talk to people and reach out and be personable. And I knew as soon as we started talking, you can just tell it's going to be a great conversation because you're so personable. So I think, I don't know, I don't think that can be, some people are gifted, right? They're just more extroverted and personable. But I think even if you're introverted, you can still work on being more personable.
You just got to be more intentional about it. I think like if you're getting an MBA, the book How to Win Friends and Influence People should be mandatory reading, because I think that's going to be, you can hear people over and over reference that book on how it was so helpful for them, because it's truly, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and a lot of times that's what helps you to get to different. I tell that to my wife all the time. Like, I'm just like, man, it really is not what you know, it's who you know. And if you can actually be intentional about going and building relationships, I think that by itself will be the thing that propels you further to where you want to be, more than knowledge. And because I think knowledge actually has a tendency to make you more like prideful, and puffed up. Uh, and then knowledge without application does nothing. And so I think at the end of the day, if we can, the more people that you can get to know and be really intentional, even if you're an introvert, just get out there, like just do it and then go back home and rest for the next week. But like, push yourself to go to that thing once a week or whatever. I think you'll start seeing doors open and opportunities that you wouldn't normally have unless you went to those things and pushed yourself out of your comfort zone. I think because that's right. Like on the other side of like uncomfortable is where your goals and accomplishment lies. You really got to push yourself past where you're just comfortable. Otherwise, I don't think you'll ever get to where you want to be.
So true. Devin, I'm really glad we're connected for one reason, and that's I see the next stage in my career as having some type of real estate fund, because I
Nice.
work with a lot of, and I do some, I've started doing some of my own developments, but I work just as the broker selling a lot of developers projects. And
Oh, bro, get you. Yeah, no, do that for yourself. Get you that money. Make it
exactly. And
happen.
so here's the thing, Devin. So one thing, when I was trading, I left my company that sent me to the US. Me and an older guy, we left and we set up our own company. And we had really complementary skills. He was the most incredible natural trader the world had ever seen, but he had no idea of risk management or how to, how to deal with employees and things like that. So together we were so much more than the sum of our individual parts. And I think so in my idea, in my head, I haven't even started doing anything down this road, but the idea of having a real estate fund, I think that I could do really well on like sourcing things from the wholesaler relationships or the developer relationships I have, where I can get things that never hit the market, that have some equity in there, some meat on the bone. The idea of me flying to California to like schmooze with rich guys to try and do the financial, the aspect of raising money for it, I think I could do it. I think I could be good at it. But back to the start of this conversation, I don't really want that where I like, going to bed every night with my son and things like that. Like I, so for me, I feel like, and I'd love to pick your brain a bit on this. I feel like I would need the right partner where we kind of pick and choose the roles, and ideally I would deal with the projects and he would deal with the capital raise. Is that how most people do it in something like that?
This is fantastic. All right, buckle up. But yes, so typically when you have a fund, there's three people. There's so like you want to think of the three. So you have the operator, which is what you're talking about, right? That's the person who's going out finding the deals, finding the sponsors, the partners, something like that. So that's the operator or the deal finder. And then the second person is the capital raiser. So that's going to be the person that goes and schmoozes that guy in California. But then the third person you're going to have is a fund manager. Now, it doesn't mean that, like, even in my first fund, I was all three. But then like as I have another fund, like because so here's for instance, I am so bullish on crypto. I desperately want to start a crypto fund. I cannot trade. I understand fundamentals, but I don't want to be the person that knows the most about it. I want to have a rock star trader and person who knows and understand the fundamentals of crypto, can trade, can do all that stuff, and that's all they do. I raise capital, I manage the fund, and that's it. So typically, but then you have three roles, right? Somebody's going to manage the fund, compliance, um, taxes, the docs, even like client or investor relations. That's going to be kind of the fund manager side of it. Maybe not the investor relations part, but they probably could be and probably would be. The other person is going to be the capital raiser. That's their job. They raise capital. That is 100% a full-time job. There is no doubt about that. And then the other person is the sponsor. So whether you're in private equity, whether you're in you're in stocks and running a hedge fund, or whether you're in real estate, those three are pretty. universal on all different types of funds. So yes, you would definitely want that. You do not want to be all three of them because running a fund is a high calling. You have a fiduciary responsibility, monitored, regulated by the SEC, all those things. It is also the most lucrative business model in the world by far, but you definitely should not be wearing the weight of that on your shoulders. It definitely should. You want to have partners in a fund for sure.
Yeah, no, that's so helpful. I'm also incredibly bullish on crypto, specifically Bitcoin. That I love the idea of the complementary aspect of real estate in terms of it tends to be a good store of value. It tends to have good tax write-offs,
Yep.
things like that, long-term
Oh man.
appreciation. But it's more stable. I think it had something like a quarter of the volatility of the S&P the last 60 years. And then you couple that with Bitcoin that has the upside volatility and the so together as a I think Nassim Taleb talks about the barbell strategy. So he talked back in the day of having 90% of his fund in like T-bills, making a couple of percent, but super safe, and then 10% very speculative options. So if companies did really well or went bankrupt, he'd make an absolute killing. And so I like the idea of that same approach with the upside potential of Bitcoin and a few other crypto ventures that have a lot of potential, and then add that to something that's much more stable, like passive, turnkey real estate. So I think that'll be a really cool thing.
Yeah, I think so too, man. And both of those are, I mean, both of those are massive hedges against inflation, against the dollar, and typically both of those are always going to go up, especially in this context. I just think of like, man, you of course we can speculate on where Bitcoin's going to be 250,000 by the end of the year, by summer, whatever. But a lot of that is based on one, what you have because Bitcoin is a finite amount, right? You only have 21 million because there's not going to be more printing of any more Bitcoin, but there can always be printing of money, especially as people are refinancing assets. There's going to be, and with tariffs are deflationary anyways. And because of that stuff, that's all very bullish on Bitcoin and real estate. They both are hedges against inflation, the printing of money. Both of those increase in both types of markets. The only thing is, of course, once you start getting to interest rates, that affects one, doesn't necessarily affect the other. So both of those could be really good. And if you balance that with some T-bills and things like that, if that's what you decide to do, then that helps. And that's why hedge funds, so they're hedging themselves um, against volatility, the different market shifts. And that's what made, so I have on my podcast, I did an hour and 30-minute, just like life story of Ray Dalio. I do it for fund. It's called Fund Founders, like that series. And that's what he created his all-weather fund for, is it weathers all market situations. And so when you're diversifying in different asset classes where you've got the stored value, but the finiteness of Bitcoin, where like, I don't know, they just found a massive gold mine in like the Sudan, where it's like, where that could always bring the value of gold down or something like that. You only get a certain amount of Bitcoin. And then you have that with the value of property. You can't create more land. And so just the idea of being able to balance those, I think that sounds really cool, man.
It's so funny, Devin, when after the world shut down with COVID, I remember there was all these people talking about, oh, the cities are dead. And now, a few years later, I think the rent price in pretty much every major city is reaching all-time highs. I know it is in Chicago this season.
Yeah.
So it is true, yeah. One thing, so I'm very pro Bitcoin for two reasons. One, if someone said you have one asset class to put $1 million in and you can't touch it for 5 years, what's going to have the most upside? I think it's going to be,
Yeah.
there could be some small coins that have a better return, but they're for me, too risky. But I think it will be Bitcoin all day. The one thing that scares me is the idea of quantum computing somehow making Bitcoin worthless. And that I feel like it's I don't understand quantum computing too well. I've heard people talk about how just the incredible speeds that it can solve things in 20 minutes that will take, some of the most powerful computers decades to solve. I don't know how that could be applied to the algorithmic nature of Bitcoin mining. So that's the only thing that I think could be a bit of a black swan. And given how crazy the world is, I think I think if somehow they could, the idea of Bitcoin being so difficult to mine is part of its value, right? So I just wonder how that could throw a wrench in. But that's the only thing that I worry a little
So
bit.
curious. Hold on. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Just gonna ask ChatGPT. I'm just like, I don't know the answer to that. Quantum computing affect the value of Bitcoin. I mean, why not, right?
And
I don't know.
you know what's so awesome that you're doing this live is just to show the power of AI, because a lot of people are reticent to embrace it because they don't like the idea of it. And I think, unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's here to stay. So if we don't embrace it, we're gonna embrace it in years down the road and be behind everyone else. So kudos to
Oh
you.
yeah.
So pro AI.
Well, and that's what I talk about with with teachers. Teachers who are like, no, you can't use AI. No, my kids, we use AI all the time for their imagination. I actually put a bunch of prompts on my like Instagram of like the things I do. So I'll turn their drawings into really cool lifelike photos. They love it, right? So like these things are cool. All right, so let's see. Private key vulnerability. And then it says not all Bitcoin is immediately at risk. Unspent Bitcoin is in unused addresses. Is still safe. Quantum computers can't crack what they can't see. Thought that's interesting. 3, Bitcoin can and likely will upgrade. The Bitcoin protocol can be upgraded to quantum resistance cryptography. I guess you would use quantum computing to create security.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then market impact scenarios is just like breaks ECC and Bitcoin doesn't adapt. But like with the way that it is, it probably would adapt, it sounds like. And so I don't know. And they say that's 5 to 15 years away anyways.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that fits your 1 million in 5 years.
How hard is it, Devin? So this fund, the way you broke it down, I thought was really good. So the operator, that's something that I'm very passionate about. The fund manager, someone dealing with all the compliance, yeah, that's probably not really my strong point either. The capital raising, what's it been like trying to raise capital the last few years? I've raised some money for some developments I'm doing, but I'm talking small amounts, a couple of $100,000 for a development. How has it been for people that are full-time managers just raising capital in this environment?
So, well, the environment, but mostly preceding the election, super shaky because people don't know.
Yeah.
And I think uncertainty is the number one thing that dictates what people are going to do with their money, how uncertain they are in something. But there's two things. There's about $7 trillion sitting into IRAs right now, really being underutilized, especially if people have old IRAs from old jobs. So one of the big strategies for me was helping people to transition their old IRAs into SD IRAs. So then now they can at least beat the inflation by investing into things. So really tapping into that market is super impactful. But then I think also if you have a good deal, money's going to find good deals. And people, when they're uncertain in things, like you just have to find what their tendencies are. So some people are going to be uncertain in the stock market and they're going to want to take their money out and put it into something else that has a little bit more certainty. And that's where like syndications do really well. A syndication would do well because it's one deal, one asset class. Here's the pro forma. Here's everything about it. Invest into this one deal. And that's where like blind funds would be a little bit more difficult because it's like, hey, this is our thesis. I'm going to hold your money for 5 years. Just trust me. So like now I ran a blind fund and I launched it 2-3 years ago. And we did pretty well with it. But now the market shifted. So then like I have to regain and actually make sure that everybody keeping the trust up during the market shift and letting them know like how we're adapting. So like the communication aspect is important. That also leads into more people coming and investing with you and then them investing more with you over time is how well you communicate and how you do that. So it's not just getting the capital, it's keeping the capital and having them come back into it and then also them recommending. And it's also how you structure your capital because like, think about this. If you're like, hey, thanks for investing your money, you'll get your first distribution in a month or like in a year, 6 months, whatever, depending on how long it is. Rather than if you go and now not depending on how you structure this and it depends on how what your model is because this just doesn't work in a lot of real estate specifically. But if you can give people monthly distributions, then every month they're seeing that, every month they're excited about it, and then every month they're talking about it because they're like, yeah, I just got paid out of this thing and I get paid monthly passively. And they're like, what? And they tell their friends about it because everybody wants to brag about the good returns that they get. So it really depends on your track record when raising capital. The amount of certainty that you can bring to the deal. And because there's so much dry powder sitting and like what that network looks like for you. And then where you're going out and networking, being in the right rooms, being around the right people. Because like there's a lot of times where you probably have a buyer's list of people, right? People that want to or have been interested in buying your deals.
Yeah.
And then you're like, there's not a lot of good deals out. I'm very good at finding them though. And I have this opportunity you can invest into. So there's people that want to invest. It's not the right market or they're not finding the right deal for them, that then you can actually be able to leverage that and say, hey, I've got this, this, and this that I'm doing right now. And so really it is harder than it has been before 2021 when it was like super easy to raise capital for any deal because things were just moving so quickly. It definitely has changed and become more harder, but it's caused you to adapt and it's caused us to like capital raisers and people to be a lot more thorough and understanding of what our deal is, what the thesis is, and then being able to structure it correctly to make it appealing and for you to be able to make money still. So I would say like definitely down the last couple of years, but also not impossible.
So what you said, you mentioned 7 trillion on the sidelines, basically.
Mhm.
So that's exactly.
It's somewhat in. So sorry, in SD in IRAs, sitting in IRAs in America right now. So specifically, but I do think there's like 2 trillion in dry powder, just kind of sitting, waiting to be invested
Well,
in the US. So I think like both still very high numbers.
yeah, exactly. Because Warren Buffett alone doesn't he have something like 350 billion just sitting there? So it's like
$1 billion in cash.
yeah, and that's why I'm so optimistic. I always talk about, I think by the end of even just this year, every major asset class, gold, Bitcoin, real estate, S&P, I think it'll be at new highs by the end of the year. So, and I'm very,
100%.
so last thing I want to ask, because you mentioned tariffs earlier, you said tariffs are deflationary, but I thought if you put tariffs on things, that's going to be inflationary because it's going to increase. Isn't that why one of the reasons why we've seen rates go up a bit recently? Because of fears about tariffs being causing costs to go up.
This is really good. Really good. So I heard this morning, and that's what caused me to like think through this and talk about this. So tariffs are deflationary because what ends up happening is as we start pumping more money into America through that, and Trump also ultimately wants to go ahead and do away with income tax and replace it with the taxes that we bring in because we have more money. It makes borrowing cheaper because
Yeah.
when borrowing gets cheaper, then people start refinancing, they start selling assets, they start buying more assets. And when they start having to sell equity, they have to print more money. And because they have to print more money, then at that point, interest rates drop because it becomes cheaper to borrow that money. Does that make sense?
Yes. I see what you're saying.
Let me see.
Yeah, because
Sorry. I heard about it this morning, and like that's what really got my wheels like spinning on it, on the idea of like because the tariffs are bringing more money into America, it drives the value.
it'll drive
I'm trying to
borrowing
think.
costs lower because it's a bigger pool
Yep,
chasing yield. So yeah, that makes sense.
that's exactly right. Sorry, and I heard it this morning, and I was like, "Wow, that is true." And then like I haven't had the time to formulate it, and so I'm formulating it right now with you. But yeah, so like that's what makes sense because the lower the rates, the lower borrowing becomes, the more equity gets pulled out of things, and the more cash that needs to be printed. Printing money by nature is deflationary because now interest rates lower, inflation is lower, so borrowing, yeah, because we're printing more money, QE, right? Quantitative easing. So yes, that's why.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's why we
That
saw
makes sense, right?
yeah, because we saw the historic low interest rates with all the
Mhm.
QE from the COVID shutdowns. That makes sense.
Yep. I actually heard somebody this morning, the same guy I heard, he thinks, I don't know how true I think this is. He thinks Trump is going to print more money than Biden did. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know about all that. That would be crazy. And so then he was like, oh, yeah. So then I think we'll see $250,000 Bitcoin easily by the end of this year. Yes, I mean, gosh, if Trump prints more money than Biden, yes, we will see that. But I don't know how true that is. That would be kind of crazy.
Devin, last thing I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with the thought? So one of the biggest, not think, I mean, I don't lose sleep over it, but I do think about how different the world has been the last few years and how we're living through these crazy transformations with technology, with blockchain going to, Bitcoin probably going to become the reserve currency of so many countries. AI is going to cause
Hmm.
disturbances. And I worry about, like, I don't worry about myself. So I know I'm a hard worker and I think I'm good at relationships and I'll be able to always find my niche. I do worry about the vast majority of people that don't seem that motivated. They're going to be so many job cuts in all these different industries. And I do worry a little bit about the kind of world that our kids are going to inherit. are you an optimist for the future? Do you have worries, or do you think that it's all going to figure itself out and you just have to find opportunities? Because it doesn't matter. It can be a good market, a transitional market, a bad market. There's always opportunities in any market. So I just want, you seem like you're such an optimistic person. I just wanted your thoughts on the future.
Yeah, I think that we are living in the sweetest spot of human history. I think if you look back the last 50 years ago, a little clunky. Cars were a little bit outdated. Like things were a little bit harder. You know, like technology hadn't been advanced yet. Didn't have iPhones, things like that. And so life was a little bit more difficult. And that maybe like 50 to 100 years ago. But I think if we look 50 to 100 years in the future, I think it's going to be too easy, right? I think you're going to have, I mean, look at Elon Musk. I actually don't think that Tesla is a car company anymore. I think people are getting it wrong if they're like, oh, Tesla's stock is dropping, all that stuff. I'm like, y'all, if y'all still think Tesla's a car company, then you're way behind. Tesla is a humanoids company. Like they will be the first, just like he brought Tesla, the car, like just like he brought the car, that advanced so quickly in the car world. He's on that same trajectory with humanoids, like by far. And so he will be the first to bring them to market in a very usable consumer grade, where like by the end of this year, we'll start seeing robots in people's houses, which is be crazy. And so when before that was on a 2 to 3 year horizon, that's going to be like the end of this year. And what we saw historically was like, I think the statistic was like 10 years ago, for every year, we advanced 200 years in technology. For instance, when you think about how quickly we went from the industrial age to where we are, or cars to where we are now, those are like 30 years, right? We are advancing at a 200-year pace every single year. And now with the advance of technology or AI and systems and the way that it is, we're now advancing way faster rate. Things are happening so much faster. And I think we're at the sweet spot of history where it still requires a good amount of human effort and mixed with artificial intelligence, where in the future, I think it's going to be too easy and create really lazy people. And then in the past, it was just too hard. So now I feel like we live in this really sweet spot now. And I think it's going to come down to our kids understanding how to leverage it, not for like understanding that you got to leverage it for good, right? Like we don't want to create evil out of the world, but also being able to leverage like our goals and our gifts and our talents with it. And then once we do that, then I think like, I mean, honestly, it just comes down to just raising good people, like raising good kids, because technology can get to a place where it can be used for really bad, but also can be used to really change the world. And I guess it just depends on how good of kids we raise.
I
don't know.
Well, yeah, like I feel like technology is just like money; they're amplifiers. So it's more important to to be good people. Devin, you are a true gentleman. You're so charismatic. This was such a pleasure. I know we're going to talk again soon, and I really appreciate you inspiring me. I really love that. I'm going to re-listen to it, but the idea of just growing the business with the pendulum swinging back and forth, that's really awesome. That's something that I personally have to work on, is just more scaling and less me doing things. And then thank you for inspiring me. I believe that all these conversations is the universe pushing me towards my goal of opening up a fund. And I love that data you said about 15% of the wealthiest people have funds. That's really cool. I didn't know that. So yeah, that is really, really great.
Yes.
Brother, let people know where they can find you if they want to learn more. And obviously I'll put links on the show notes too.
If you want, I can, my Instagram's the best thing, Devin.Robinson1. And then like, if you want to learn more about funds, we are fundfounders.com/foundations. I have a 101 course on funds, and it's free, completely free. And it'll walk you through like 12 videos on the really important things that you should know if you want to start an investment fund. I'll definitely throw you in there so that you can have that and kind of look at it, because it's people are raising capital. I see this all the time. People are raising capital, violating a ton of SEC laws as they're doing it. And so like understanding and knowing how to raise capital compliantly is super important. But then also if funds or something like that is something people would be interested in, just learning how to do that. You can tell, I love it. I love it. Love talking about it.
I really appreciate you, brother. I can't wait for part 2. And thank you so much, Devin. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate you.